All right, I'd like to introduce our next guest, because this is something obviously very close to yourself, no, close to all of us, really.
Yeah.
And I believe that we are going to continue this story, and it's sad news, but it's excellent news, which is forward. And this is what the platform is about. Solutions, and I think that we have got to that solution. So do you want to introduce our next guest?
So just a little bit, a tiny bit of background. So 43 years ago, there was a terrible fire in New Cross, the New Cross fire. And I come across people who don't know about it, or they think they may have heard something about it. And it was tragic. 14 people lost their lives eventually. And the gentleman who's about to come on now, he lost his brother in the fire. But you know what? Why? It was a sad story. But the gentleman we're about to meet, Gary Collins, he lost his brother. Him and others have turned this around, and it's about the legacy. So as much as it was a very tragic situation with lots and lots of bits and bobs that go with it in terms of making even a bigger tragedy, but it's about what's happening now. So I'd like to introduce to our platform, Mr. Gary Collins. Gary, you there?
I am.
Hey.
Nice to see you again, Denise.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
And nice to virtually meet you, Quincy, as well.
Yeah, pleasure, my friend.
Good.
I'm doing a lot here. Right? When I meet people who are related, who have got someone connected to something indoctrinated and about the culture, I feel a bit more gassed meeting someone like yourself than I do when you meet a celebrity, because I know that your story and other people's stories similar to yours are something which has changed history. So just, you know what I mean? So it's a pleasure, Mr. Collins, to meet you.
No problem. It's a pleasure to meet you guys as well. Go on, Denise. I'll let you go.
No, because I just think, like, you know, we've got, and Pat's going to be coming on too. Yeah. But I think if you can just lay out really briefly a bit about the background, and then tell us where the direction we're going. Yeah. Okay. Because I think it's really important.
I mean, there's two different points of reference for me. One is I'm the chair of the older generation and younger generation, and that was started in 1970 by my father, who I think, like, for most of the Supreme readers, listeners and all that, they probably would know him as Sir Collins, the reggae producer, and the Four Aces and all that, the nightclub. So he was quite big within the community and all that stuff. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to that as we go along. I don't know how long I've got. So I'll just here we go. That's okay. You're on it today, Denise. Okay. So the New Cross Fire Foundation. So this is my feelings on the New Cross Fire Foundation. This is why we kind of founded the New Cross Fire Foundation. I think within the last year and a half, we've been campaigning against the councils and different organisations in authority to kind of let us have a say in what the New Cross Fire narrative is, you know, because 43 years, everybody looks at the New Cross Fire. And when you do look at the New Cross Fire, you always seem to find some kind of cloud that comes over you, because it's it's a place and a point in history that people of an age should understand that changed the whole of society that we are in today, you know. But if you mention it to anybody that's under 40, they don't know nothing about it. And that is, for me, is a shame, because even the conversation that you guys were having beforehand about stop and search and all that stuff, if people don't know their history, they continue the cycle of what they go through. Do you understand? And for me, history is very, very important to where we need to get to as a people, because as I said, we don't know our history. We don't know where we're going to go. So Black History Month, that should be eradicated. All right? That should be taken away from us, because I see Black history, especially UK Black history, should be taught the whole time through the whole curriculum, January to December. Because this is where we're going with this New Cross Fire Foundation. So we know, and because we're so closely connected, my brother died in the fire. My other directors were actually in the fire. the lady that you're going to speak to was the one that organised the party. You know, so these are the things that really are close to our heart, and we always believe that everyone asks us this question: oh, do you want to find out who done it? Now, for me, that's a silly question, because of course, I can't say it's a racist attack. I can't say it's something happening. I don't know what happened. Now, if we went to court to do all of this now, it's going to take us 20 years to kind of get to a solution to where we could say, let's go to court again. I'll probably be 1 foot in the grave by then. You understand? So what we're trying to do now is build legacy, making sure that that situation and the injustice that the families and everybody that was put under is being recognized. And we can only do that by legacy, because if we wait 20 years and we look back, we haven't got nothing there, because slowly but surely they're kind of pushing our history under the carpet so everybody can think about it. So what we've done so far in the first year is basically we've kind of put our input into the memorial, because the memorial was always, for me and most of the people that went to the memorials back in the days, it was a white thing, because the councils were doing it. You understand? It was a white thing. It's like, like you watch the shows on Sunday shows, and you see the memorials, and it was just white vicars and white congregation, white choir, and all that stuff. So the foundation is kind of taken over that. So where we this year particularly, we made sure that we got a black gospel choir into that, because the foundation has got a bit of more of a say now in what we do, and we also got Caribbean food. So for you to come down and sit down and eat food, you understand? Because that's what we do. So instead of other people doing our narrative, we're trying to take control of our own narrative now. And the only way we can do that is through legacy. So as Denise showed you that stuff on that flyer, on the 2nd of March, my organisation OGYG and the New Cross Fire Foundation, supported by the Mayor of London, supported by Hackney Council, supported by B6 College and all that stuff, we've redeveloped the New Cross Fire Tribute Avenue in Hackney Downs Park, which was done by my dad and myself in 1997, but we never got around to finishing it. So now it's because everybody walks past there thinking, oh, what's all these trees about and what's this about? But no one actually knew what they was about. And this is part of our history, because that was the first memorial site set up for the kids in 1997, because the other councils didn't want to do it. So, Lewisham Council did not want to put a memorial site for the kids. I don't know why. But my dad planted those trees in front of the house fire on the first anniversary, and the council told him to pick them up and move them because they're going to grow too big. So he moved them to his nightclub, which was the Four Aces. So from the Four Aces got regenerated, we've moved them to Hackney Downs. So there's a story around every single thing that we're kind of doing. But this is one public realm space that we need to know, that because we interacted with the kids as well. So we got 14 kids, ironically, 14 kids to come to a workshop in Hackney Archives, which is ironically named after my dad, the Collins Tower. Right. So we got 14 kids to come in, and when you see this board that we're going to unveil, the kids' thoughts of how we spoke about the New Cross Fire to those kids and what they got out of it are on National Interpretation Panel. So we're bringing those generations to understand the history of the New Cross Fire. So these public, I know I'm talking a lot, but these public, these public realm spaces are so important. So we've got 3 public realm spaces that we're working on. So we've got the New Cross Fire Avenue. We're going to have the Dalston Square Gardens, the New Cross Fire Gardens. We're actually working on that now. And we're also working, thank God, for I don't know why this has come around, but Lewisham Council, we want to put a monument in Fordham Park where the Black People's Day of Action started, in front of the moonshot and all that. So there should be a monument. But around this, it's not just about putting stuff there and just leaving it. We're working with Goldsmiths University, B6 College, all these other schools to kind of get something around the educational side. And I don't know where Pat is because I'm like Pat.
I just sent a message to Wen because I don't have her number. Can you send a message? Can you send a message to her?
Is she not there? She said that she was in.
They said she's not in our studio waiting.
Right.
Yeah.
We're waiting for lady Pat Warmington, who's the educational side of the New Cross Fire Foundation, and is working. I'm right in saying she's working alongside yourself, Gary.
She's one of the co-founders of the foundation as well. So we work really, really well together. We've got different departments of the foundation. So it's for me personally, is like we've had a lot of bad feelings against us because we're not doing the criminal stuff. You know, we're not saying, okay, fight for this. It was racist. It was this. It was that. Do you understand? We can't do that because we want to be a kind of a non-political, non-aggressive organization that can approach the powers that be, who have the money, who have the resources, that we can come together and try to find a solution to the problem that's been going on for 43 years. You know, so we're trying to be that. What's the word? I would say that light at the end of the tunnel for the New Cross. But we have been getting bad feedback from some of the parents. Ironically, some of the brothers and sisters and all that stuff, who's been doing little bits and pieces throughout the years. And for me personally, it's been 43 years now. I think it's time to change the way how we deal with this, you know, and use that historical event as a power to take us through to the next generation. And that's how we and I think the whole foundation see this, you know. We're not doing this. I'm not doing this out of recognition for myself. I can do what I want to do on the other side and still get on. You understand? For me, it's about bringing a resource into the community, because we're not just dealing with an educational side, we're dealing with trauma as well. So we will have different classes and bits and pieces to deal with trauma. So when you were talking about your previous stuff, and this is where Patricia would come into it. So we would like Patricia to come into it a bit more, but we're talking about, we're not just talking about people with trauma around the fire and all of that stuff and trying to help them counsel them out. We're talking about trauma in general, trauma as in if somebody got stabbed in a school, it's not just the person that got stabbed and the person that stabbed him that's traumatized, it's the whole school that's traumatized. Why can't we get something in those schools to deal with that? Because that's if we don't deal with the root of the problem, it just gets escalated and escalated. So for us, that is part of our resources, which our other directors are fully what's the word? That's their profession, basically. That's what they do, you know.
I just want to say, so Patricia's in the group. She's in the room, but she's in the wrong room. Yeah,
she's in the wrong room.
She's in the wrong room. So I think the link has been sent.
Message.
Let me send her the same link that I used, and then we can go from there. So
Patricia, we are going to get you on, Patricia. You've gone into the champagne room instead of the dancing room.
It's too early for that, mate. 1 second. Let me see if I can find that link for you. Got in there. 1 second.
This is what it's coming.
I love live, Quincy. when the grandkids want granddad's attention. This is why I love live. Oh my, hi.
Oh, you know what I mean? Just walk into the studio.
Gary, you know have you sent her a message? Yeah.
I'm just doing it now. I'm just trying to find the link that you sent me. I got it now.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, Gary, regarding the victims and their families, and you mentioned, without highlighting it too much, going into it, that you seem to have got like a little resistance.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, because everybody was united under grief and still is today, and everyone's dealing with it in their own kind of way. Do the families of the victims, is there like a group? Do they stay in contact?
Let me tell you something. There are throughout the years. Yeah, this is how the New Cross fired. I mean, I was only 10 years old when my brother left the house and went to that party to play at that party and never came back. I was 10 years old, right? But I must have been the oldest 10 years old because I remember things so vividly what went on in my life and how life was at that time. You know, I mean, I went to all the funerals, and for a 10-year-old, it was devastating. Some of them had open caskets, and that's the first time I went to an open casket, and it was just my head was just all over the place. You know, sorry, let me just paste this thing for Patricia.
That's right.
That's it. Right, done that. Right. So there was. This is how I saw the New Cross fire, and this is how when I speak to other people, they see the New Cross fire. So we had the families. The families was. Say like I'm in the middle now of you two. I'm in the middle of you two now, yeah. So on this side we had the activists. So we had all the activists, the Darkest Hours, and all of those people in that corner. And then on the other side we had the councils, the police, and all of that stuff, yeah. And we was kind of in the middle, trying to get our grief out and get our words out. But we was being pushed from pillar to post. From the activists going over to the council, going to the police, and all of that stuff. So it got really messy, even at the beginning stages of families' bereavement, because the thing that kind of comes to mind now is in the last memorial I was speaking to Baroness Lawrence, and I was telling her what we was doing, and she goes, "Gal, good luck with that, because it was only my family, but you have 14 families." And I thought, okay, so there was work to do because nothing has changed. Now, saying that, throughout the campaign of what we've done, because we haven't really released the foundation, but we have released the foundation, if you understand what I'm saying. We're out there, we're doing our stuff, but we haven't finalized and said, right, this is it, we're going to release it and do everything properly. So throughout the time, it's a slow battle. It's like chipping off. So I'm saying to some family members what we're doing, and at first they're a bit standoffish, but now they're coming to us to see, because we are making that change. We are changing the memorials. We're changing the bursary setup. We're creating the monument. But slowly but surely, I would say, in my eyes, we've got 60 to 70% of the families behind us, you know? And there would never be 100% families behind us. But for me, I'm doing this for everybody. It's not just about, you don't talk to us, we're going to leave you out. No, I'm going to include you. I'm going to invite you to every single thing that we do. Like, that's all I can do. And in the future, when your grandkids and your grandkids and your grandkids can see what we've done and literally in motion and touch it and don't forget it, that's what it's all about. And that's what we're trying to achieve. So when it comes to the family's dynamics and all that, no one can't say, "Oh, Gary, stop doing what you're doing because you're doing it for history and you're doing it for the community. And stop doing it, Gary, because we don't like it." No one can't say that. Mm-hmm. I'm the
one second, Patricia. I'm going to put this out there. You need to come out of the champagne room, which is everybody else is in, and come into our room, which is the educational room, the room which you are expert at. So I know Gary has sent you a link. To just on WhatsApp. So check your WhatsApp, please, Patricia. Patricia is the educational side, and she's going to further the conversation about the educational side of what's happening with the foundation, so to speak.
Gary, sorry, Gary. Somebody's just said to me, What was the Black People's Day of Action? And I just think, what was the Black People's Day of Action?
What was the Black People's Day of Action?
Yeah, what was that? Because
it's exactly what you said on the tin. It was the Black People's Day of Action.
Yeah. But there are people who know the points. I had a conversation with you that know nothing about what that was. What was it that happened? It was the month after, 2 months after the actual fire. Can you tell people about what the Black People's Day and what it actually entailed? Did you go? You was only 10. No.
I was at the beginning with my dad, and then my dad left me and went and done what he's doing.
Yeah.
So, I would say the Black People's Day.
I like how you handled that. my dad left me and doing what I'm doing. So that's back in the day. That's like don't ask me my business.
That's right. But as I said, my dad was quite a big figure in those days. So if you look at all the uprising things on the thingy, but you'll see my dad in there all the time, popping his face everywhere. You know what I mean? So you'll see my dad. So, but the Black People's Day of Action, and I sometimes, and this is what I said to you about the activists and the politicians and all of that stuff, and us little family members that are just going through all this grief and stress and all that stuff. We didn't know what was going on, to be quite honest. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about that, for me personally, it should have been, if it was anything, it should have been a New Cross Fire Day of Action, you know. But it wasn't. It was everybody put themselves in our grief and campaigned, you know what I mean? But it should have been that, because that's what they was carrying coffins. But there was no reference to the New Cross Fire. It was Black People's Day of Action, which is understandably because everyone was grieved in that time. But when you look from a family's perspective, what does that mean for the family? Does that mean that we are going to get shunned even more by the political system because we've caused all of this? You understand? Even though it was a peaceful march, I know it was a peaceful march, you know, and whoever, I know there's solicitors and High Court judges that went on that march and built their names on that march. Darcus Howe built his name on that march. You understand? There's lots of people that built their names on that march. But when this is what I'm trying to say, when we look round, who's dealing with the families? Who's dealing with the families? The families are going to court. And another thing that they set up the massacre committee, the New Cross Fire Massacre Committee. I mean, how does that feel from a family's perspective? I know I don't want to undo everybody's perspective of how the New Cross Fire looks, but sometimes you have to understand of how the families took that on board, you know? And it's not just me. It's not just me just saying it out as an outspoken person and I'll just say how it is. I'm speaking on behalf of other people that I've spoken to who was involved in the New Cross Fire. So the Black People Day of Action was, for me, it was a sign of things had to change. And this is why the New Cross Fire thing is probably so historic, because that was a time just before the Brixton riots. You understand? And there's so much things happening that year. You understand, like Bob Marley died in that year. You understand? In April.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Prince Diana and Charlie got wed in the same year. You're right. Even though it's nothing to do with us, but they wanted to keep the public quiet so they can go along with their things and do what they're doing. You understand what I'm saying? So there's lots of different things that we can look back in history, but we don't understand the history because no one has documented that history. And that's where I come into with the OGYG, because my dad was a.
Can you tell them what the acronym stands for, please? The OGYG. Can you tell them what the acronym stands for?
Okay, so the OGYG stands for the older generation, younger generation link up. It was back in 1978, I think he started it, yeah. And it was basically bringing the youngsters in and to understand where the elders are, and vice versa. The youngers are doing certain things. Like me now, personally, if I'm talking about OGYG, I want the youngers to teach me how to go on the internet and do what I have to do. You know what I mean? But then I can talk to them about life skills of where I've come from and how I've done my things. You know what I mean? So this is what I'm trying to say. The historical part of what I do now, I've done this for, I would say, 5 years. My dad passed away, God bless his soul, for 5 years, and I've taken on the whole of his stuff. So without him, the Hackney Downs wouldn't have been done. The Dawson Square wouldn't have been done. The Fordham Park wouldn't have been done. You know, and us as people now trying to get memorial sites, you would never get one now. But because my dad put those in place before he passed, it's making our life a bit more easier in the foundation and the OGYG. So as I said, my dad was quite a character. So he was one of the first people to bring reggae music over to this country in the 1960s. He was one of the first people to have the first black-owned nightclub in Dalston. Obviously, the tragedy, he represented our family in the High Courts by himself, and he was a great community man, you know. And he was also a historian in his own right, because he hauled, he was a hoarder of information. Now, when you say a hoarder of information, he left me with a 20-foot storage container of videos, photos, documents, showing all the main historical parts of us as Windrush generation moving forward. And even before that, my uncle, his brother, in 1966, wrote a book called I don't know how they've done all these things in them times, but they've done a book called The Jamaican Migrant, and it illustrates his family going back to 1922 in Jamaica. You understand? So we've got a long history, yeah. But my dad has documented that history. So we have one of the biggest Windrush archives, and I'm telling you that now, that anybody's kind of managed as to date. And we are working with Dr. Etienne Joseph in the Hackney Archives, and we've been sponsored by the National Archives, which is unheard of, to get all of this stuff documented and all that stuff. So it's not done yet, but it's going to be done. So, but all that historical part, that element of stuff, is there, and it's there for everybody, because we're not doing it for us, we're doing it for the community. Because, as I said, without your history, where are you? You know.
Yeah. Let's bring her on now. Let's bring on Patricia now. She's in the wings waiting. She's come out the champagne room, so she should be coming on. Yeah. Do you know what, Denise? Denise, I just want to say this. Gary was speaking about the families and everybody. We've never spoken about what the families have experienced. We've never, in any kind of disaster, because as we unite as in melanin, we always speak about it from a point of view of the injustice. And we would naturally, like Gary mentions, is understandable, because at that time and until now, we were literally being peppered by authorities. We were being violated by the police, and there were laws being put into place to discredit Black people in parts of the UK. So the New Cross fire was just another example, but an unfortunate extreme example. So I can understand how the Darkest House, the Paul Boatangs, how these individuals capitalized on that. And I'm not saying they capitalized is in for their own game. It can come across like that. But it just shows you that when you don't have a united front and a vision and an end game, how it can turn very, very messy.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? And sure. I take example of, I'll just say this, I was telling Denise, Gary, mm-hmm. I totally relate and understand where you're coming from. No one ever speaks about the family. We always, because so much injustices has happened to Black people throughout the years in this country, you're going to add, this is what happened to me, and you're going to add that. And they're going to be opportunists in their own right who are going to take advantage of that. And I think that one of the great examples for me is if we take, and it took years, but if we had the ethos as the Hillsborough 96, mm-hmm. and those families, when their loved ones went to a football match and some of their loved ones never came back in 96, and up to today, Liverpool, this is one of my favorite cities, if not the favorite outside of London. Those families stuck together, and those families had a united front person fighting for their cause. And I think that because, and it just shows us, because we are so traumatized as a community, we tend to not come under one roof. So it's go on, Denise.
No, it's a couple of things. So that one in particular, in terms of the Hillsborough tragedy, it's important to remember it took a few years, but what they got that financial support. They've actually got support from the government to sustain and maintain. Oh, she's here now. That's good. To sustain and maintain what they're doing. The New Cross Fire Foundation, the survivors of that fire have never, ever, ever had that. It's what can potentially come. It's the work that Gary and his directors are doing now, but they did not have the government backing. And that's really, really important that we recognize that. But it's something that can happen in the future. In terms of, and I think that this is why this is different for me as well. I know of the fire through Wayne, yeah? And I've had the most detailed and profound conversations with him as being a survivor of the fire. But when I went to my first memorial, which was just a few weeks ago, I went to the one in the church. I met, say, for example, I met a gentleman there who's a survivor, and all I could see in his face was trauma. I could still see the trauma that gentleman was carrying. And so he's just one person. There are lots of people who, how many survivors were there, Gary?
I can't remember offhand, but it was about 40 odd. 40.
Even that, there's 40 odd, yeah? And all those years, they have not had that type of support that the survivors from Hillsborough, Liverpool fans have got. So it's down to, I really appreciate what the foundation are doing, but they are now about the legacy. That's really important that our listeners hear this. Yeah, the historical stuff we'll never forget. We cannot forget it, but it's how we can move it forward. And that's what they're doing. And that's why it's important. So for example, the event on the 2nd of March, I think I'm going to be there. It's about making sure that people remember it, but this is the direction they're going. And when Pat comes on.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to comment on the conversation, feel free to do so. 07464019433. We are trying to get Patricia Warmington on. She is the person who is literally behind the educational side of the New Crossfire Foundation, and she is going to literally tell people, like, moving forward for our younger generations to know. And when we say no, learn from, because it was a period of time where it was a lot of racial tension in parts of London, and it should have been something that we can show our young people. This is where it was when we was growing up, and this is where it is now. So things haven't improved. So how can young people take that tension and turn it into something positive? And what Gary and his team and Patricia are doing, they are coming at it from a, is it wrong to say, a humanitarian point of view? You are looking at it from a healing point of view, which is this is one of the few times I've actually spoken to Wayne about this. I've always come at it from a look how they handled us point of view. I've never come at it from a point of view of what are the families experiencing? Like, what support did the families get? Is there any talks of compensation? Is there generational help? How it affects the families mentally? I mean, sure, you like Gary, you'll be reminded about it from 10 years old for the rest of your life. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. 1 second.
Yeah. And then you've got a situation. I think it makes it difficult when you remember what happened in Ireland the following month at the Star something discotheque in Ireland, where 48 young people died in a discotheque in Ireland, and Margaret Thatcher and the Queen hot-footed it over to give them support. It took a few years, but they got compensation. They were all compensated. People who survived the New Cross fire never received a penny.
Yeah. And as I said, those days, if you're above 45, 50s and all that stuff, you'll understand how those days was. Yeah, we was always, we still fought as second-class citizens. You know, we were, you know, we was a piece of thing on your shoe. That's how they treated us. You know, and something as is this Pat? Oh,
hi,
Pat. Hey, I've got the link.
But as I said, I'm just going to comment about that thing about the Prime Minister. Now, this is what I'm talking about, history, yeah, and this is so important because I'm sure most of the people that just heard that didn't even know that, Denise. Yeah. So the fire happens, and basically the Prime Minister at the time, which was Maggie Thatcher, she did acknowledge the fire. it was about, I think it was, I can't remember how long it was. I think it was about a month afterwards. They acknowledged the fire. Tell me if I'm wrong, Pat. But
more importantly, what they did at that time was they disenfranchised us as Black teenagers, a Black community, because they said it was a party for West Indian children. And like, we're born in Britain, so like that was news to us, because we've been, my parents are Jamaican, I've been to the Caribbean. I know I'm not Jamaican, I'm a Jamaican descent, I was born here. So straight away that affected how things moved forward, because that them doing that to us just meant that we were like neglected. We were neglected by the government.
But they did the same thing to Grenfell as well. You know that.
100%.
They didn't acknowledge Grenfell either. So it was, as I said, it's history repeating itself again. And those documents, that particular letter coming back from Maggie Thatcher, I've got that in the archive. And you could hear the excuse of why they didn't send it. But my dad sent about 5 letters after the fire to them, and they didn't want to respond. So all of those things, as I said, for history purposes, for us as the foundation and how we kind of want to progress moving forward, has to be kind of referenced. It has to be in schools. It has to be all over the place. Because it's not something that was an incident that didn't cause social change, because it did. It caused social change throughout the nation. So as I said, I'm gonna.
Gary, you know this inside out, because I know you and Pat. This is part of who you became because as a result of the fire, and I know that Gary, it's all in your head. You don't need a script, and neither does Pat. Neither. She doesn't need a script to talk about it. But in terms of, this is about a legacy and how we've moved things on. And Pat has a key role in terms of the educational lead on this, on the New Cross Fire Foundation. So it would be fantastic, Pat, if you could share with us what your role is and where you're going, the direction you're going with this.
Thank you. Yes. So, and thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having us on your show. Thank you for the platform to share some of what I think is really progressive kind of programs that we're trying to put out there. So we're putting together an education pack, and originally it started with trying to see if we could work with key stages 3, 4, and 5. That's 11 to 18-year-olds. However, we've actually worked on it more so we can work with primary schools as well. And the 4 areas that that the education pack covers is culture, citizenship, justice, and equality. And I heard before Gary was talking about B6. So they're young people who are not in mainstream education. And the day that we spent with them that you mentioned before was to pilot the education package and how that could look. And we worked with using the archive material from Sir Colin's Tower, the archives. And it was really good. I mean, he's already spoken about the interpretation board that we're going to unveil in Hackney March the 2nd. But the young people that we worked with, they got it. They were split up into those 4 separate different groups under each of those banners. And I'm telling you, at the end, there were a few tears. There was this kind of empathy, because we were talking to people that were 15-year-olds, 16, 17, and I was 15 at the time. So when we're telling our story, they get it. They really do get it, because we're at that level, and that is just part of the condition that many of us are in, because we can never forget the New Cross fire. And over the years, even if we wanted to forget it, you know, there's a memorial on the 18th for that. But every time, or most of the times, and we're telling our stories, we regress. If you know, it's all this regression. When I'm talking about the story, I become that girl that was at that party, because that's what I know. I'm trying to explain that. So it was just really interesting. So I think that, you know, we've got a really good education package going forward. And ideally, we would like to work in Lewisham. I come from Deptford. I come from Lewisham, you know, London Borough, Lewisham. But, you know, we've been speaking with them since last year. And it's a kind of a slow movement. So it's really great that Hackney Council and with OGYG were able to give us that kind of opportunity to try the education program.
Great, that is fantastic. That's really good. I mean, I'm hoping that somebody does actually ask some questions, but that side of it, I know I'm very keen to see how the educational side of it will develop, and I really want to, you know, offer some supports, which I've offered some support around that. Pat, and I know it must be difficult for you because you talk about you was actually there. Gary was probably home in his bed. He was a 10-year-old at the time, but you was physically there. And so it must be really difficult when you're having such conversations to not regress into that period of time, because we're moving forward. That is what the project is about moving forward. And I think that must be really difficult for you to do that. Sorry, Gary.
Yeah. I mean, trauma is real. And so, you know, part of what we're hoping to do as well, I mean, we do have the counsellors in place, is to offer that counselling. Right. You know, we've already talked about the survivors. Right. This is there's families and then there's survivors, even though it's for the same thing. You know, there's 52 of them, and I know, you know, them personally. I know some of them personally, and what their life has been like.
Yes,
I know what my life has been like, and it was only when Uprising, which was the BBC, which was the production that came out, aired on the BBC. It was only then that I understood my place in the whole of that, because you mentioned, Quincy, as well. There's a whole kind of socio-economic crisis, political platform that was going on. You know, we knew that there was National Front, you know, at the time, but we kind of lived with it because it was just there. But there was this whole thing going on, and unfortunately, after the fire and after the first inquest, we were left to fend for ourselves. And like I said, I was 15, so and that was very traumatic.
Yeah, and just let the viewers know how long it took for the inquest to come into place.
Yeah, so the first inquest was 2 months.
2 months.
I mean, they were in such a rush because, you know, they didn't want it to say it was a racist attack. You know, I was arrested with about 7 other people. And that's just because we were the last ones to physically just step out from their house. They thought the children had done it. So they convinced me that there was some fight that was going on, you know. And so we went through that as well. So the first inquest was 2 months. And what happened, and I do have to say that what happened was because there was this, you know, Gary talked about this cloud, and this morning, the police investigation was impeded because so many people said that they were there. That, or, you know, they just said, yeah, I was meant to be there, I was going there. So they went through all that. But I want you to know that there was only 100 people at that party. Only 100.
You organised it, didn't you? Did you not organise a party?
Yeah, so there was a guest list. I mean, and that's what, you know, what we were doing, we were policing the landing. Yeah. And anyone who knocked the door, because we know he was on the guest list. So lots of people got turned away. Yes, some people did try and get in because the sound systems were playing. But it was a child's birthday party. It wasn't a dance. And I think that this is the thing that people I think that sometimes things get embellished over the years. They become these stories and these fantasies and more that's adding over the years. And it wasn't. There wasn't a lot of people. The room wasn't rammed. I remember dancing around with enough space. It was a child's birthday party.
And I think that is, see, that if I didn't know, obviously I know Wayne, and hearing your stories, I grew up thinking to myself, the rhetoric was, it was a typical ram out dance. Look, we all know that when someone has a party, people used to come along there who weren't invited. We get that, but the notion, what the rhetoric you've just given us, and the picture which was painted to the media and to ourselves, even down to like members of my family, saying there's too much people at the party. Like, this is why it's so important to get this story out there and to set the record straight.
Yeah. Tell me, look at the time, tell me what okay, so this platform, for you, for Gary, for you, Pat, for Wayne, is here for you to use. Yeah, and I said that to you when I met with you today. If you want to put something out, there's something you want to share within our communities, please, you can use this platform. So please remember that. Yeah, always put us there as somebody you can use.
Thank you.
Right, no problem. But what can you? I mean, there's lots of people listening in. I've got messages here. There's lots of people listening in. I've got a lady in Cardiff who's listening right now, yeah, on the FM. So here's my question. What is it you want the community to do? How can we support you? What can we do? Because one thing that I've done is, like, say, for example, people who I know are psychologists, I'm kind of just gathering some people together that time, Pat, they may be able to assist you, particularly for the work that you're specifically doing. But Gary and Pat, what is it that we can do as a community? And we're not just talking about London, not just talking about Lewisham and Hackney. Yeah, we're talking outside. What do you want us to do? Tell us.
Do you want to
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gary. So it's we want, first of all, we want the narrative to be right. That's a starting point. We're talking about this embellishment, etc.
Yeah.
It's to get the, as you're aware, Denise, we're holding consultation meetings so that we can speak to members of the community, so that they can pass the message along. And we hope to have many more of those. So that's the first thing, to keep the narrative.
Yes.
The second thing is to remember. We talk about legacy, but remember in a positive way. And let me just explain. For the past 40 odd years, before New Cross Fire Foundation was established, what would happen, on the 18th of January on Facebook, etc., was you get all these messages going on, the children must know what happened, everything was very negative and dark. So it's about sort of, looking into what we're trying to achieve, and promoting, the New Cross Fire promoting, but, promoting the legacy in a more positive way. That is what I think. Just the positive that, yes, we lost 14 of our friends, but there's 52 of us that are still here. And, we're walking wounded. We're walking wounded. So remember us as well.
Yeah. So
remember the survivors. Remember us.
Of course.
Okay.
And the question was, what kind of help that we would like? Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's the most easiest thing I could say is to say that don't let my brother's death be in vain. And the work that we're doing in this foundation for me is very, very important for our community. It's not just the New Cross Fire families and this, that. It's for our communities, because there's no joined up thinking no more. If we can go out there as an organization that had made social change, back then and bring it forward to today, and bring all of these other community organizations under the umbrella. That'd be my dream, because then there'll be much more focused thought of where we need to go. So if we need to go somewhere, it's not worth that person saying something, that person saying something, that person saying something, and they're all going away saying different things. We all need to say the same thing and walk the same line. That is my.
One second, Gary. Ladies and gentlemen, can you both stay for another 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to come off the FM because I want to continue this conversation, and I want Patricia to get as much voice out there as possible. I don't want to rush in. So we're coming off the FM, come across the YouTube channel. Go on, guys. Go on, Gary. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I'll let Pat go. Go on.
Yeah, and Denise, I'm aware and familiar that you've worked on campaigns, and you may still work on campaigns. So when we're ready to campaign for that memorial, the monument, please can everybody support us with that and understand what the value of that is. At the moment, there is a stone in Fordham Park, and I did that, that in memory of our 14 friends that lost their lives. I didn't know that was there until 4 years ago.
And you worked across the road from it.
And I worked in the Moonshot Centre, and that's where it is. I didn't know. An officer from Lewisham Council, we called them to a meeting, and then they took us across to show me where it was. And it's pitiful, and that is all that's there. You've got that big park, Fordham Park, if you know it, at the bottom of Clifton Rise in New Cross. We want something, on the side, at the size of the Windrush monument. We want something big, like as a beacon in honor of those that lost their lives and the survivors. We want there so that people can congregate there. It's a place for solace and reflection. It's going to cost a lot, but we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop because we want it there.
Mm-hmm. So you're aware that I have a fire group called the Box Bundle, which was really, really useful in terms of the aims and objectives of what they're doing with some specific fire services in the UK. And maybe one of the things what I've realized is that we've actually made some movements, and that's because of people power. Yeah. So literally through a chat group, we have found the skills of so many different people who've been able to help us do different aspects of that particular project. When we're off air, I'd like to have that kind of conversation with you two guys too, because there are, in this chat now, are listening, well, not obviously on the FM now, but people on the YouTube, there are people there, or even if it's not them, there's somebody who knows somebody, who can open the door. And also what's really important is that what's the word I'm looking for? We need allies as well. And there are allies out there too, that could potentially open, because sometimes they could open them doors a little bit, when we can't always get in there. So I think it's really important when we're off air to have that conversation. But if there is anybody in the chat or anybody who wants to message Quincy or myself, please let me know so I can store your numbers and details for when we perhaps can put something together like that, especially with Pat, the educational side of it. And I think the trauma part is one of the things that is really gets me, because I've realized more than ever how trauma of the people who survived. Even listening to you guys, I'm listening to you, Pat and Gary, and I hear trauma. You're after all these years and you're still there having to deal with that. So I'd like, as a community, us to get together and support this. And that the 18th of January next year isn't like, oh, what's happened? What's so important about that date? I'd like to be part of a program that pushes that through, so that people are prepared for the 18th of January 2025.
Thank you.
And then lastly, before we depart, I think it's quite important if we can find out the people who are organising a similar thing to what you guys are doing for the Grenfell, because Grenfell is history repeating itself, and no one's speaking.
Sorry, Pat can answer that.
Right, so are you in contact with people for Grenfell?
Yeah, so we sit on the London Fire Brigade Community Forum, and around that table are survivors from Grenfell as well. So we are working together. It's, even though we're individuals in terms of NCFF and Grenfell, what we're doing with the community forum, and we're quite blessed to be on that. Because that's only just come about early last year, is that we're able to support and share good value, good practices, and learn what's going on. So I know that they're doing, they're trying to do their own memorial. What I'm going to say, I'm just going to say it. Yeah, let's just do that. Our aims, what the New Cross Fire Foundation and the group that we're working with, there's a difference. I know that they're both fire related, but there is a difference as to what it is, what the final outcome, we're looking for. Because don't forget the Grenfell is about the rehoming, and there is the kind of investigation into the how London Fire Brigade dealt with it. So that's kind of like that's in the courts, etc. There's a legal part to that. We're more not for any kinds of court cases, anything like that. We're more for the community involvement and community development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm just saying it as well, and I agree with that, because I think ultimately what Gary mentioned, no one's speaking about the families, and this is what I'm going to see. Not you guys. You're going to see it come up again, another anniversary. And you're going to see a BBC or a Sky News talk to a grieving family, and it's look at their grieving, and it takes you back to the 18th of January or whatever, when the BBC and mainstream media looked at you guys exactly the same way. And I was just thinking about coming together from a family point of view, because the campaigns needs to be done, but how you guys are dealing with the family, because unfortunately the reality is you are connected through grief, and grief doesn't show no color. It's a universal thing, and PTSD. So it'd be a great opportunity to if that could happen. But Denise said, we've got this platform here, and I would do everything in my power. And I think, do you know what would be really nice as well, because we do want to look solutions, to invite young people, do a live show, but have young people in the audience. So having you guys live, but having young people in the audience, because they can relate to a Grenfell and don't know necessarily, and we can speak about the similarities of the treatment by the authorities and the government, and how this should never ever happen again. I see Patricia's brain just ticking there.
No, because and I think Gary mentioned this before. So there are activists as well. So some of our the survivors, our beef is not necessarily with the London Fire Brigade. Was really good, and that's different to what Grenfell. They were good. Police not so good. But then police isn't really involved in Grenfell in that kind of way either. I'm just talking about the differences. But it was the elders is what some of our grief is about. We talked about some of the activists, the black activists that had us and then dropped us. That is, if you were to speak to us, the 52, that is what you're going to be hearing. It is what it is. Yeah, but we have no one.
I just answer Quince's what he spoke about, talking about grief and all that. Yeah, I think that for me, sometimes we kind of steer off the path that the New Cross Fire Foundation was meant to be set up for, because we always go back to that grief. And I can talk to Patricia and say to Patricia, when we first met, we was all under grief, we was all under stress, we was all like, everyone was arguing with everybody, and everyone was doing this. And I said to everybody, listen, if we're going to shine a light on this, and this is nothing to say like I haven't got no emotions or nothing, but I said, if we're going to shine a light on this, and we need to get this somewhere where it's going to be different than what it's always been for the last 43 years, we're going to have to departmentalize that in our brain and always look at it in a brighter light moving forward, instead of going back to the stress and the 43 years, because I've gone through counselling. You know, I've had my counselling. You know, I've cried 40 odd years of tears. You understand? But now I don't want it to be the New Cross Fire Foundation. When people look at us, they're going to have pity on us. They're going to have pity on us. I don't want no pity. You understand? I want encouragement, positiveness. I want things to take us through to that next window. You know, we won't never ever get that if we're all thinking about, oh, I'm so sad. I've been so sad for how many years? It's time to come out of that, because I can't die sad. I need to kind of leave a legacy for those kids that had all of that. And I know Patricia keeps saying 53 survivors. It's not 53 survivors. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of survivors, because I wasn't there, and I'm only family. Do you understand? So there's hundreds and hundreds of people that survived that. Do you understand? All of my cousins, all of my aunties, whatever, they survived that because it was a traumatic time. You know. So when we're talking about we're going to go back to that stage. No, I don't want to go back to that stage. No. I don't want to be spoken to like, in pity. I want to be spoken to like, empower me.
So I hear exactly what you're saying, because you've had that conversation with me. And you know what was really powerful, Quincy? When I attended the memorial service, there was a little girl, cute little girl. She might have been 3 or 4, about 4-year-old, and it was her uncle or granduncle that would have died in the fire. And it was so, I just loved the conversation that her mother was having with her. Okay, and she went to light a candle. You got a video or pictures of her lighting one of the candles in the church, that little girl. And what I loved about that was the fact that she was not even a thought in her mother's eye, you know, at that time, but she was really aware. So what you've just spoken about, Gary, the fact that it's not just the 53, 54 survivors, there are many, because we don't know what the impact of what she's aware of through her mother will have on her in the future. So what you just said is a really, really, really key point. So I'm fully with you. So as much as internally, I know that I will carry with me, I'm going to carry with me the trauma of what you talk about, but I'm with you in terms of moving forward. What I'm showing externally. I'm sure you'll never ever, Pat, forget. You'll never ever forget, Gary, you waking up that Sunday morning, your brother wasn't there. You'll never forget what your role was, Pat. You carry that. But I really think that there are people in this audience, and we're going to have to close this. I can see we're going to have to go in a moment. There are people. There are people who are listening in, and if you really, really want to help support this, because I am so behind you, if you want to support this program, please contact Quincy or myself, and we'll take it from there.
Or us as well. I'm Gary.Collins at NCFF.co.uk.
And
any content at NCFF.co.uk.
Say that again, Patricia.
Pat.Warmington at ncff.co.uk.
Gary again. Gary.
I'm the same. Gary.Collins at ncff.co.uk.
There you go, folks.
All right. So look, guys, thanks a lot. We will get you back on definitely and continue. I said, and I agree with Gary. Moving forward, we're going to be talking about the solutions of shining a light on something which is negative. Yeah. So thank you guys for coming on, and have a great day, and enjoy the rest of the day, if not the week. All right.
All right. Thank you very much. Blessings.
Take care. Bye bye.
You both still look good for ages. You both still look good.
Thanks, darlings. Take care.
Right. Then you take care of yourself and have a great one. I'll be in touch. All right.
Yeah. Cool.